the Snowman Factory. This is a fun painting for Christmas. I always like to hang something a little special up for Christmas, and this would be something that you could use for many years. So I think we'll have fun painting this one. This is done on a 16 by 20 canvas. And let's run through the colors that we're going to be using today. And we'll start with the white. And then this one is cad yellow medium. And this one is raw sienna, cadmium orange, cad red light, that was running, a little bit of ultramarine blue. This is ultramarine violet. And then here we have some raw sienna. I guess I got that one out twice, so I don't really need that one. This one is raw umber, and down here we have some Payne's gray. So those are your colors for today. This is my small background brush we'll be using today. And then we're going to need a liner, just a little number 1, number 2 liner would be good. And for little flat brushes, maybe a size 8 and maybe a 4, so you've got a couple of different sizes there. And when it comes down to the little people, you might even get a little round brush or even a smaller flat, whatever would be convenient for you. Of course, you need a little bit of turf. I've got some of my brush cleaner in this container here that I've got sitting off to the side. And then in this small cup, I have a little bit of liquid glaze, and that's a painting medium. Your painting medium thins your paint, and it also speeds the drying time. So that's good to have a little bit of that on hand off to the side. You can just dip into it when you need it. Okay, so now then we're going to get started. And let's start with our sky. And pick up your small background brush, and that will be a good one because we can kind of go around everything. When you come up toward the moon, if you will leave a little area unpainted about, maybe 3/4 of an inch away from the moon, so don't work your blue sky right up against it. But we're going to start with white, and I just brush mix my colors. Pick up some white and kind of move it off to the side where you can get into it. And then I'm going to go into the Payne's gray and pull a little bit of Payne's gray out and brush it in. Probably a little touch of ultramarine blue could be added to the sky, and I've got a little bit of violet in there too. Remember, this is a nighttime sky, so we don't want to get it too pale, too light. Usually people will get the sky just a little bit too light, and it doesn't read well as a nighttime sky. So think of it being dark, and we can always lighten it up with a little bit of white, and the color will vary a little bit anyway as we go along. So mix a color that you think's pretty good, and let's just try it up here on your sky and see if you think it's dark enough. Mine looks pretty good, I think. This is about the color value that I'm looking for. So we're just going to paint it right up against the tree. You're going to paint around the tree, kind of around those background bushes back there. And it's up to you if you want to make a pile of paint with a knife. I don't. I just kind of brush and mix as I go along, adding a little bit more violet. Right there I picked up just a touch more violet. Kind of get a little variation to the color. That's why I don't make a pile. I prefer to brush mix so I can get some small variations to your color. Makes it a little more interesting and realistic, I think. So we're just going to work in with these gray blues to begin with. And you can look at your color picture so you can see about where you're going with these colors. And we'll just continue working on our sky. Okay. Okay, so we're just going to continue on here with our background color. So as you stretch this paint out a little bit with your painting medium, that makes it go down in the texture of your canvas better, and keeps you from getting just a lot of heavy, thick paint on there, because you don't want it that heavy and thick. Make your brush strokes go all different directions too, so that you're not, just going one way all the time. So we're just continuing on to fill in this sky. It will take a little while to get your sky in. Be sure when you have a tree like this, you've got all these limbs up in the sky. Of course, I didn't put in most of the limbs. We'll put those in, just freehand those in later. But be sure that your sky looks like it's about the exact same color from one side of the limb to the other side of the limb. We don't want to get sections of blue that's different inside each of the limbs. That would look a little odd, so you'll be sure and try to avoid that. Little bitty limbs, even if they're drawn on the pattern, sometimes it's better just to paint them out. It's a lot easier to put them back in than it is to go around them. Make your brush strokes go in different directions, like I said a while ago, probably, but anyway, we'll just keep painting. I didn't really go for any clouds in the sky, but if you happen to have some areas that look like clouds, that's fine. Just go ahead and leave it as clouds, a few little clouds. I mean, there's always can be clouds in a nighttime sky anyway. Careful of the little chimney. Be sure you're painting right down exactly to the house also. Sometimes people get scared to get too close and they leave a little edge around the buildings or around whatever it is they're going around, and then it looks like you went around it. So we don't want it to look like that. Even though we did go around it, we don't want to look like we did. Coming over close to the moon. Remember, we're not going to paint real close to the moon because I want to make a halo around the moon. How that glow sometimes you see around the moon at night. Looks like a halo around there. So I'm going to leave, and it doesn't have to be an even space, but just leave some space, kind of about like that, around the moon. And then we can come back and hopefully make a little glow around the moon. Yeah, I go back a lot of times over areas where I've already been, just pulling the colors together again and making it look a little soft. Everybody's colors are going to vary some. It's almost impossible to get everything exactly the same as you paint one picture and then the next one you paint, although you're doing the same picture, it winds up looking a little different because you're going to mix your colors slightly different each time, and you know that's part of the fun. That's all right. So we don't get too far away from our values that we're looking for. When you come around these buildings, if you feel like you need to, you can get a smaller brush to work around your house and the little chimneys and things that are small, but I usually just kind of go with the same brush. But if you're having trouble with it, don't be afraid to go to something smaller and then come back to the big brush. Do whatever works for you. Coming down to these trees back here on the left side, we're going to paint the tops off of those trees. When you come to the trees, I know they're kind of drawn in your pattern there, but that's just to give you the idea of where they are. But we're going to paint them out. except when you come down to where they would all be dark down below. We don't want to paint that out because that'll be like solid dark trees. But up here in the sky, where they're going to come up into the sky, and you've got the sky behind them that's showing up, we're just going to go ahead and paint those out. Okay, let's paint the moon and go to a flat sable. This is my detail flat. It's about a size 8. That should be a good size for your moon. And this is going to be a little bit of a glow to the white. But now these colors are very, very strong that we're going to be using to make that glow. We're going to start with white. And so pull some nice clean white off just a little bit down here where you can mix into it. And add just like a pinhead of yellow. It's such a tiny, tiny little bit because these colors are so strong. And a little tiny, tiny pinhead of orange. And then I've still got it way too bright. I'm going to have to pull a little bit more white down and pull it off to the side and then pull a little bit of that color over into it. When you get a color that is too strong, too bright, don't keep mixing white into the same pile. Just pull a little of it off to the side. Many times even just what's left in your brush mixed in with white would give you the color. So we want just this very soft off-white looking color. And then take that color and paint the moon. Just kind of use your little circular strokes here to get your moon glow in there. Look like it's a little bit bright, but it's not too bright. That's still kind of on the bright side, but maybe they've had an extra bright night tonight. So there comes the moon, and then we'll make her glow around it next. Okay, now then we're ready to make this glow around the moon. And this is going to be a little tricky because we've got to just soften all these colors together. And if you have a real definite tracing line around the moon, that's something you've got to cover up. Probably should have mentioned it earlier. Sometimes if the pattern is real dark on there, I will erase part of it first just to get rid of that heavy line. But too late for that. We've already painted the moon. Okay, I'm picking up white with the flat of the brush, and I'm just coming in kind of straddling between the blue and the unpainted area. And you don't need a lot of paint. You just want enough here that it's going to soften these lines out and continue with this circular motion around the moon. And stay out of the yellow right now. Just get up to it, but then stay out of it. We don't want to really touch it that much because it gets green. And it takes quite a bit of blending here, as you can tell, to work these colors out so that it creates the glow with no definite hard-edged line anywhere. You really don't need a whole lot of white in the brush here, just a little bit. And see, I'll work it out and then back again, so back and forth, keeping this circle thing going on. You get way out into the sky and then come back in again toward the moon, so we're getting rid of any lines that we don't want to see. Picking up just a little bit more white now and then. Sometimes you actually do have to just touch the moon just a little bit, just to even soften that edge on the moon. Kind of barely touch it. just keep circling around. It takes a bit to get this worked in, so don't get too much in a hurry because it takes a while. Keep the brush flat, so you're brushing on the flat of the brush, not any chisel edges, because that would just dig lines around. Could probably have used a little bit wider brush too if we'd had it maybe like a 10 or flat, something like that, which I didn't list at all, but sometimes a little bit wider sable brush makes the blending go a little bit quicker. But we'll just continue on with this one because we're getting there. And softening the edges of the moon too. The moon does not really need to have a sharp, hard edge. It just needs a little soft edge. I'm going to change brushes. This brush is clean and dry. This was my small background brush. Make sure it's dry. Wipe it on a paper towel. And then come in and use it as we kind of blend back into this sky. That's a little better. It does need that somewhat wider brush to soften these edges out quicker. That looks much better. Quicker and easier. And when you get about to that stage, I think we're probably that's probably about enough. See, I don't have any hard line left, and it just kind of looks like it creates the glow that goes out. So I think that's where we're going to quit on that one. Okay, now then let's move on over to these background bushes. It's back here to the right side of the house. And they're going to start out with just a real dark base coat. You can use your small background brush and pick up your Payne's Gray and a little bit of violet. And then just kind of use the bottom corner of the brush, and we're just blocking these in. Now if it looks real purple, get some more Payne's Gray. We just want a little nice dark value back here for a base coat. Come down to your line there, that's the bottom of the bushes. But when you come to the top, if you work on the side of your brush and then tap on up into the sky just a little bit. You don't need to stop exactly at the line. The line is just to say this is about where the bushes stop, but always come past it just a little bit so you get that softer look to the tops of your bushes. And also you want to get a little uneven look to the top. Some of them can be taller and some of them shorter. We don't want a hard straight line there. They look much more interesting if they're uneven at the top. And we'll come right on over here against the house. There's a little bush here in the front that's more next to the house. I'm going to leave it for now. If you painted it, it's not a big deal, but let's try to leave it for later. And then on the other side of the tree, some of the same thing. I didn't thin this paint anything, but just work it in and kind of smush it down. I give it a little whippy stroke to kind of scoop the brush just a little as you put it in. That way it covers the texture of the canvas better. Okay. And when you get that in, I'm going to go ahead and put just a little bit of white in my brush. A little bit of white, because these bushes are not real white because they're way back far away from you. But tap with just a little bit of white in the corner of the brush, and we're going to put some snow on them. But like I said, they're not close to you. They're way back. So it's not going to be a real white. It's just going to have enough in there. It makes it a lighter purpley gray value there. so it looks bushy. But keep a lot of the dark still showing. Don't lose all your darks, or then you have to add it all back again. But see, just kind of get that little soft look back there in the distance. Then those bushes are done. Okay, we're going to move to the other side of the house now. We're going to paint our pine trees. These are kind of tall trees, and there's just 2 of them. Well, I've got 3 actually, but however many it needs to fill in the space is what we need. When you're doing tall trees like this, be sure you get them uneven. Like, you know, one could be this tall and maybe another one taller and maybe another one shorter, somewhere in between, so they're not all even in height. I patted these in with my small background brush, and you can even use a smaller flat if you would rather. Sometimes I do trees with a fan brush, but this is not one of those times. This is a little tighter type tree. Again, we just want a dark mixture. I'm going to use the Payne's Gray. I'm going to maybe put just a little touch of raw umber in it. So you have a very dark value. Now watch what I'm going to do here, because I'm starting with a placement line. You could call it a trunk if you want, but to me it's just a placement line. But it would be the center of the tree. And I'm working on the side of the brush, and I'm just patting this in and deciding how tall I want it. I'm going to bring it up a little taller than the chimney, so it's not even with the chimney. So maybe it's that tall, perhaps. Okay. So see, you're going to get that line in there, and that's the middle of the tree. I'm going to pick up a little more paint, and then you're going to start below the tip. Work on the inside corner of the brush. Tip your brush over just a little bit. There's your brush. Tip it just a wee bit, and tap. I'm just patting. Don't scoot your brush. Just pat. And these little branches come out. Sometimes I kind of go a little bit up and down and pat, and then up and down and pat, and you're coming right on down. See, I'm getting them a little bit longer as we go down. And when I get over here next to the house, actually I can quit making branches. It's just all going to be solid right in here, because there's no sky or anything showing between this area. So it's just going to be filled in. See, and there's one side of the tree, because the trees are behind the house, of course. See, and that gives you half of the tree. And then load the brush again. Okay, we're going to do the other side. And again, I'm rocking the brush just a little bit so the pressure is on the inside corner of the brush. On the inside corner. And I'm just patting. And I'm staying on that inside corner. And that gives you a little wedge shape. And with that wedge shape, you're building the shape of the tree. Just pat, 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 pat. See, come right on out. Don't scoot. Just pat. And then as I come down here, this is just going to go right against the edge of the roof there. Okay, and then see, we're going to have one tree. Now down in here, the trees are all going to run together anyway. Up here, they're separate, and you see sky through them. Okay, and then get that one in, and then we'll do another one quickly. Okay, I've got one tree in here, so now your next tree is going to come in. I've got a mark right there on where I put the pattern line on. So we're going to make this tree a little taller, and again I'm just using the side of the brush and patting in a placement line. We'll come up just a little bit taller than the first one. And then again I'm going to start just a little bit below the tip and just use the inside corner of the brush and tap, tap, tap. Just little patting strokes. See, as you pat on out, it makes the little branches look kind of like little wedges. I kind of pat up and down where the branches are wider. You can kind of pat up and down and then out. And keep plenty of paint in your brush. Reload. And a little touch of medium in there doesn't hurt anything either. So now once you get down into where your trees are all running together, you don't need to worry about your shape of the tree, because all of this is just going to be solid dark all the way over to the house. So you can just fill this in. When we come in and put our highlights on this filled in area, that's going to separate the trees. But right now you're just filling it in. Just fill it in, use the whole flat of the brush, fill it in. And then we'll come on down and we'll do our other side. So I'm going to pick up my dark again. And again, start just below the tip, inside corner of the brush. Handle is down. And we're just patting in this side of the tree. Here it comes. As quick as it can. And these are pretty fat trees down in here, and then that's why they all begin running together, and you don't see any separation at all right now. Just fill it in. And so there's 2 trees, and then we only have 1 more to go. Okay, we've got 2 trees in. Now we'll just do 1 more. And let's make this one a little shorter maybe. He'll just fill in all the way to the corner of the canvas, edge of the canvas. So he's kind of a little skinny tree up here to the top, and then he just is going to fill in, totally covering the white over here. We'll just fill all that in. Doesn't need to look like anything but just dark space right here, so that goes real quick. Don't try to make a tree out of it yet. And then we'll come in with our white, and we'll put a little bit of white on our tree, and that separates your branches. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to clean the brush. I'm going to get rid of the dark in the brush, clean it out with your turp, dry it out, and then load one flat side of the brush. When I load the brush, I'm just going to pick up some white on one side, and you don't need gobs of it, but I don't know, just enough so you've got some white there. And then hold it so the paint is up. See, the paint is up. And then I'm just tapping with the corner of the brush, light tap. And we're going to throw out a little bit of white snow on my tree. I have to reload once in a while. Kind of working in the corner of the brush and just kind of zigzag back and forth. I'm not trying to hit every branch or anything like that. I'm just putting some white on there. It would be a little bit whiter on the moon side. That glow from the moon would probably come over and hit that. Sometimes it's a good idea to let your tree dry a little bit before you put the white on it. But we'll just go ahead and do this one now while we're here. But if you have time and you're painting at home, you can just let your tree tack up a little bit and then come back with your white. But really don't need lots of white anyway, because again, this is nighttime and it's kind of soft colors and subdued colors, so we don't want it to be real white anyway. So you do pick up a little bit of the dark as it's wet, of course, and you're just coming in and kind of rocking back and forth to get that branchy look in there. And then we could stop at that point right there. I think that's enough snow on the trees, okay? Okay, we're going to begin on our house, and you'll need probably your detail flat brush. This is my number 8 flat sable. And let's start with this little gable end up here. This is just a little real shaded area of wall back inside this gable. We're going to use raw umber. And we'll add a little white to it when we want to lighten it up. Don't use a whole lot of paint. Don't pick up a whole big bunch of paint, because it really needs a very little bit. And come right up to that bottom line. This is just raw umber. And this is doesn't quite go all the way to the bottom of the roof. You see there's a little double line right there. Down to that. And raw umber, and then as I come up on this right side, I'm picking up a tiny bit of white with the raw umber, just to lighten it down a little bit. Maybe a little bit more white. Okay, and then work on across so it stays just a little bit darker to the bottom and to the left, a little bit lighter on the right. And just pat that in until it looks like it's in there. I want to add just a tiny bit of raw sienna right there on that light side, just a little bit. You can adjust your colors. I'm going to put a little bit more dark there. Okay, that should do it okay. So you're somewhat lighter on this side, somewhat darker on the left side. And you're all the way up to that little line there. And that will be good for that section. Okay, let's move on down now to this light wall. Now this is going to be the lightest wall of the house, so you will have some white in your mix. Now I'm going to start out with a little bit of the raw umber again. And this is going to go right underneath the roof edge. So we're working right under that roof edge. Some dark values there. I always like to put some dark right under where the roof hangs over the wall because that gives it some depth. And sometimes we lose it as we blend in these lighter values, but we can always put it back in if we lose too much of it. And then for this whole wall, I'm adding a little bit of medium to my dark, and I'm picking up a little bit of white. And we're just going to start in here and lighten up this wall a little bit with this light tan color. And again, we want to be very careful and work around our doors. We've got all this little detail stuff going on here. So we want to work right up against the windows and the little porch. Be very careful. Don't lose your little posts, little porch posts. So again, if you don't have too much paint in your brush, that's easier to manipulate. Going around it. Those little porch posts, if I lose the top of them, we'll find it again, but we'll try to be as careful as we can. And this is going to be a brick wall, so if you have a little variation to your color, that's even better. We don't need it all one flat, smooth color since these are bricks. Going to be bricks. And right inside the little porch up here that's high, little high porch. Kind of get right over against your little posts. Hopefully we won't lose them. We don't want to lose them. Try to find them again. That's hard. But we might kind of smudge them a little bit unintentionally. But I think we can still see them and find them. In this whole house. Again, this is raw sienna with quite a lot of white in it. Makes a light tan looking color. All this little dinky detail around the little banisters up there and all of that. Get that in. When we come down, we'll go around the windows and around the frames. There's a door under the porch. We're going to go around that. Turn the brush on the narrow chisel when you get in little detail areas that's small. In larger areas where it's more open, you can have the flat of the brush. We'll come right over to the corner, and that's where we're going to quit. You can have just a just a tiny, tiny speck of the raw sienna sometimes in with your burnt umber and white. A little bit wouldn't hurt. Don't get it too much. Then when you come up to the top where that shadow is, soften the bottom of the shadow a bit. You can pull it down just a little bit and then across. And that should pretty well fill in this front. Then we'll have, of course, more detail to do on it in our little brickwork, which we'll wait until we get all of the walls based in to add the bricks. Little detail. But I believe that's all of the wall that's in right now, so we're going to call this side based in at least. Sometimes you have to come out into your bushes or your sky and kind of pull over against the wall a little bit more too if you need to. Okay, when you get the front wall based in, you can move over to this left side right here, and we'll base it in as well. And it's still going to be raw umber with a little bit of white, but it's not as much white because we want this side to be darker for sure. So try your color and pull it up right against the wall and see if there's enough contrast. If not, get a little bit more raw umber in your mixture. And then we'll paint it right up to the shuttered windows. And we'll just do our base coat like we did on the other side. And again, if you have a little bit of variation of the color, it's okay. And we'll get just still a little bit more dark right at the corner line. So we don't want it to look like you've got a post at the corner line, but because we'll pull the dark on over, but make your contrast there pretty good, pretty sharp. We're going to have a real dark line right up here under your roof edge, like we did on the other side. It's more raw umber. And again, you can always, use a little bit of medium. That just makes your paint spread a little easier, as long as you don't get it too wet. The windows. Sometimes I like to just kind of block in the windows so we know where they are and you don't accidentally paint them out. Down to the bushes here under the windows. You keep your windows kind of straight with each other across the top and the bottom. I don't know, mine might be a little crooked. I may have to fudge a little bit and make some taller or some shorter, so they'll look the same. Sometimes just in the tracing you can get things off a little bit and have to straighten it up as you paint it. When we get these all in, then of course we'll come back and do our brick lines and turn it into a brick house. And they don't have to be perfect. We'll try to get our bricks in as nicely as we can, but if we miss a few or whatever, it's okay. We'll get the impression of bricks anyway. If anything, it might be just a little bit darker up here in this gable end. Check my corner here and make sure that I've got a nice contrast there at the corner and the lines look straight. If you have to add a little bit more light on the light side to straighten the line up, then so be it. You can always add a little bit more in there. Just make sure it looks like it's straight and the house isn't going to fall down. And then we've got these two sections based in, I think, to the extent that they need to be done right now. Okay, now see, even though this wall here is darker than the first wall, as we move back to these walls back here, they're going to be even a little darker yet, because they're way back in the corner, so to speak, kind of behind, and wouldn't be as light. This little front section right in here could be just a little bit lighter, and then these little walls back here will be darker, and we'll be doing those next. Okay, when these two sections are done, let's move on back to the other sides. Back in this corner, back in here, kind of pushed in behind, is this darker wall. So we're going to pick up a little bit more to the raw umber on these walls back here. I'll still have maybe just a slight bit of white on it, but not much. We've got to separate all of these sections or they'll all run together, and you separate them with light against dark, of course. Now there's some snow back here. Be careful as you come down here, because there is a little bit of snowy roof right there. I'm going to get just a little bit of white on this dark wall, but it's pretty dark. Around the windows. You got to make sure this wall is going to be a little lighter where it touches the back wall, so you get your contrast there. Snow on the roof down there makes the roof a little bit uneven. So if you can, you could leave that just a little humped up right in through there, and then your snow can be like a drift piled up against the back wall there. And I'm just coming on down, moving into this little really dark wall that's right way behind. Pushed back way behind everything else. wall's really dark. And then there's another little section that kind of comes out here. It's a little, almost like a little optical illusion here. It's hard to tell what these walls are doing here, but it's all dark. Just very slight difference there. And there's that little corner, but it's hard to tell that it's there really. I'm going to make this wall just slightly lighter as it comes out toward the front. Try to indicate a corner back in there to some degree. And then this little section coming out here is going to be somewhat lighter again. It's still on the shadowed side of the house, but it's out to the front, so it creates more light on it there. So I'll go back with a little bit more white in my mixture here and see if we can lighten it up just slightly. It would be about the same color as the big wall over here, I think. That would be enough contrast. A little door there that goes in. This must be a little family room back in there. Got the Christmas tree in the window. If you wonder why I have tape on the end of my brush, it's just so that I can find it, because I set it down at people's places and then I go off and leave it and I lose my brushes. So I put tape around the end of mine so I know mine when I see them. Some people like to put fingernail polish on the end of their brushes, and that's a good idea too. Really a better idea than taping them, I think. Do something when you go to a class and you've got a lot of people in the class, and sometimes it's real hard to keep hold of your brushes. Not that people take them, but you just get them mixed up with maybe your neighbor's brush and you lose it. And if you're teaching, like me, and I walk around and I'm always forever setting my brush down at somebody's place and then going off without it. So I put some tape on my brush. Again, I put a little darker value right underneath the roof overhang there. And I think we're going to say there's going to be a little bush here. I think I'm going to say that my background is pretty well blocked in on all of these houses. Let's deepen my shadows again just a little bit under this roof edge. If I ever had it there, I kind of lost it. Maybe I didn't have it. That creates, again, just a little more dimension, because the roof then will be lighter and comes out over that dark shadowed area there. So always check and make sure I've still got a little bit of dark under my eaves when I'm through. So. Okay, let's talk about our line work on these bricks. If you have a nice, decent chisel edge on your brush, that will actually, I think, work the best. A little bit of burnt umber on the bottom of the brush, and hold your brush so you're working actually on the side of the chisel edge. You don't want to come right straight in on the chisel, because it really doesn't draw the line very well. It cuts into the paint too much. And this is just suggesting the bricks. They don't have to be absolutely perfect, but we want to get the impression of the bricks being bricks. So you're coming across, and keep your line straight. Be careful, don't go angling off down the hill, because it'll look like your house is going to fall down. you're on the other side, they're kind of far away from you and don't show up so much, and won't show up quite so much behind the banisters and the posts and stuff, but we kind of suggest them a little bit there. A little bit over there, but it doesn't need to show up that much over there. A little bit. Right underneath the banister, or well, this little banister that's right here, and between it and the window, there's a very dark line that would be right there, kind of be where the floor, the porch, would be casting a dark shadow there. That dark value in there. These little lines between the windows wouldn't show up much. Coming on down, and then once you've got all the cross lines in, a few over here that might show, then we need to go like one row at a time and do your little downward strokes for your bricks, divided up into bricks, and then the next row would be in between the top row as far as your lines go. So that's the way that bricks are laid naturally, so that's the way you want to paint them. If you prefer to use a liner for this, that would certainly, I think, be fine. Just whichever one seems to be the easiest. Don't get in too big a hurry with them, just let them look bricky. Little bricks. If you make some that you don't like, you can just kind of mush them out and do another one. They don't have to be as perfect as we might think. Get the impression of being bricks anyway. That wall looks like there's enough bricks on that one. And we can move over to this side. And again, watch the tops and bottoms of your windows. So you're staying straight with the tops and bottoms of the windows. Keep your bricks on your house all about the same size. When you change sides, don't start making them bigger or smaller than the ones you did on the other side. Try to keep them about the same. When you have the walls that's way back in the shadows, you probably would not even see the brick lines on those walls. They're just too far back in the shade. So maybe out here you might just kind of indicate a little bit, but where your wall is real dark, they just wouldn't show up. So I wouldn't even put any in. Downward lines again indicate your bricks. Try to keep them going straight down, not leaning to the side too much. Tedious work to do the bricks, but they go along pretty quick, fairly quick. Some of them won't show up much anyway, so you won't worry about them too much. These back here are going to show up at all. These don't show up too much, just a little indication of them is all we really need. Just a little bit more light on that corner so we have a better corner. And like I said, back here I don't think we need much. I'm just going to put a little bit of texture back there so it suggests that there's some kind of texture on the wall, but we won't worry about that little area too much. It's all way back in the shadows. Okay, we're going to move on up here and paint our roof before we finish the walls and the windows and everything. Let's get a roof in. The blue grays are nothing more than just white with the various amounts of Payne's gray, and we'll try to get a little crack in here to get the distinction between the little gable end here and the flat roof, and watch your photograph so you can see where the darker values go, and where you see the whiter that's up here where the top, where the moon's catching it and lightening it up, don't paint anything blue-gray there. We'll come in with some light values for that. So this is again white, a little bit of Payne's gray, and let's start kind of in this shadow area right here. Get that little crack in there. You might just once in a while want to add just a little touch of ultramarine blue to your mix also, just to have it a little bit different values in there. All of this down in here is fairly shaded. And then as I begin to come up, I'm picking up more white. So you start dark and then you start working in more white. Make your brush strokes go in different directions. Don't just go up and down or back and forth. Go just this way and that. It makes your snow look a little softer to go different directions. Starts to get a little bit lighter as I come up to the top. But I'm going to leave, like I said, leave a little bit unpainted up there. And then I'll come on the other side, again with the blue-gray. Try to watch that you're not losing your little edges here. There's a little fascia board around the edge of the roof and around the edge of this little gable right here. And again, I'm going to leave that top area unpainted where we're going to get some of the lighter value in there. Put a little bit more over here. trick is not to push too hard with your brush. Get enough paint on the brush that you can use a light touch so you're not pushing too much. Clean the brush, and then maybe a little bit of your blue-gray is going to go over here on this other side also. This is all kind of a blue-gray, but it needs to be lighter than the sky. Watch your values. When you bump up against your sky, your roof has to be lighter. And you're going to have a little darker snow over here on this side. I'm just trying to get all the darker values in first. A little bit more dark down toward the bottom of this roof. Let's add just a little more Payne's Gray right there. And down on this lower level down here with our blue-gray, and right under the window it's going to be lighter. So I'm going to leave a little open area right under that window. The window will throw a little light down on your roof. The rest of this is kind of blue-gray snow in the shadows. So that should be your blue-gray areas, and then pretty shortly we'll add our white. Okay, we're going to put our light areas on the roof when you're ready, and this is just an off-white. It's got a little speck, tiny little speck of the yellow and orange in it. Not as bright as the moon color. Not that bright. Just barely an off-white. But it gives it a warm look, like the light from the moon is glowing on the roof. Just a tiny little bit, and then just brush it down into your blue-gray so that the colors just set together.
I had blue on my brush to pick that up, and it's almost green.
Yeah.
Not quite, but just, I notice it's. Guess I should clean the brush out.
So you're putting this on there like that, and just again, just that tiny little bit. It's probably more of an orangey white than the yellow, so yellow will make it look more greenish, and the orange gives it a light glow without getting so much of a green look in there. It's a little bit of both. So you got that section, and then there's a little bit on the top of this roof here. And there's a little bit over here on this side. I'll go ahead and put a little bit out from this window, even though the window's not lit up yet. We can still put a little bit of the light out onto the snow, because it will be lit up eventually. And that's where your light areas will be on the roof. So, okay, let's finish our roof off by detailing it out a little bit. There's an area right here underneath this roof that's like a little area where the roof edge sticks out past the wall a bit, little bit underneath here, and it's going to be darker. This is, I've got a little Payne's Gray, maybe just a little bit of raw umber in there. create a darker line right there. Then above it will be some white snow, but this is darker. And then there's a little width here, right? You may have brought your white all the way down to the bottom, but if you did, just come up over the white just a little bit to create just a little fascia board right there. And you might do the same thing over here on this larger roof area here. Let's scoot this down a little bit so you can see it. This is going to go right in under here. This is actually on the roof itself. Just drawing a little darker line there for a fascia board. And if necessary, you could go under it with just a little bit more of your dark shadow. This would be kind of a gray-white, this little unpainted area that we've got coming along this gable right here. Little blue-gray area that is going to show up a little bit. To separate it from the roof, you could run just a little touch of dark along that between the fascia board and the rest of the roof. Just a little tiny dark little raw umber line or something there. Doesn't have to be too detailed. And the only other line is this little white edge here, which is still unpainted, and I'm going to paint it with just a little bit of the white snow coming along this edge. Fascia board here. A little bit of a fascia board there. Kind of helps to lift your roof away from your wall. Brush there just a little bit. I'm just finishing up these little fascia boards here, just kind of come along these edges. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and put our icicles on. Let's take a little bit, and this is not white, this is whatever color that's on your roof right here. You can pick up just a little bit of that in your brush, like a blue-gray. And I'm coming right off the edge, and then turn your brush sideways and just give it a little flick down. And icicle curved a little bit, I guess the wind was blowing when it froze. But just pull it right off the edge. And be careful with icicles. Don't get too many, and don't make them all the same length or the same distance apart. Let them have a more of an uneven look. A little bit of white there, maybe just a touch of an icicle. Some people use a liner for them, and there's nothing wrong with that if you'd rather pull them down with a liner. But pull them from the roof down. Don't come up under the roof and stick them on. They look stuck on. They look like you glued them on there. So you want to start on the roof with this kind of the bottom corner of the brush and just kind of flick them down. And keep them only on the edge, on the bottom of the roof. Normally they won't form up on a slope angle unless there's a break or something in the shingles where the water runs down and freezes. But normally the water will run to the bottom of the roof and then freeze and make an icicle. So I've got a few there, and then we can move over here to the other side, and we'll have an icicle or two there off this nice flat roof. And very, very little paint, very quick little flick with your brush, and that pulls your little icicles right off of there. And maybe let's move down just a little bit more to the next area here of snow, and we'll pull an icicle or two off of there, and that'll be enough. Maybe a little icicle or two back here in the shadows. And that'll be enough icicles, I think. Okay, the next thing we're going to do, folks, is paint our chimneys. There's a couple of them up there. And the light side is the side that faces the moon. So on this chimney, your left side's going to be a little lighter, and on this chimney, I've made the right side a little bit lighter. Let's start out with some raw umber. And just take a little bit of raw umber, and we'll paint our dark side. Just a dark value there for your dark side. And then I'm going to pick up a little bit of burnt sienna and maybe just a speck of cad red light. So you've got a rusty, kind of a dark rusty red, and that's going to be your light side. Now we don't want a bright red chimney up there, so don't get too much of that bright red. It's just a little bright red mixed in with your burnt sienna. And that still is just a little bit red, and we want to get just to kind of suggest some bricks. So I picked up just a little bit of white that's got a touch of raw sienna in it. And just dab some little dabs on there, on the light side only. The dark side, well, you could maybe hit it with a little bit of something, but it's going to stay quite dark. Little smudges of something light's fine, but there's your chimney. And then clean your brush and make your smoke with a little white. Now watch this, because this is very little paint, very, very little paint. Start up here, start in the sky, little round, kind of circly around strokes, and come down toward the chimney. And kind of let it fade out before it gets all the way down. Very thin where it first comes out there. We don't want our smoke to look like it's stuffed down the chimney. We want it just kind of real transparent almost as it comes down toward the chimney. And then we'll do the other chimney the very same way. It's just going to be opposite as far as the light side goes. So let's move over to that one. And then again, you've got raw umber on the dark side. It's all in shade. Smaller brush would probably been better, but I'm just using the corner of this one. And then a little bit of red with a little bit of burnt sienna for the light side. And I'm going to leave just a little bit of that light, kind of pulled out real light there. You could also use cad red light with just a touch of raw umber would work too. Anything that's slightly lighter is going to be fine. Just a little bit of smoke coming out from that chimney, and they've got the fire going there too. Okay, let's move on down to our windows. We're going to paint the windows next, and we can actually kind of paint. We could actually paint all of them at one time. We might leave the Christmas tree window for later, but they're all done very much the same. We want to start with a little white with a touch of, with some yellow in it. So this is a yellow white. And this will be kind of in the bottom portion of the windows. Now don't get out onto the shutters. We've got shutters on these windows, but we're painting just the glass part of the window. So kind of quickly just throw a little yellow white toward the bottom. I haven't brought it all the way up to the top because I know I'm going to put other colors there. And even in the door glass over there where there's going to be some light. And there's a, no, let's see, that little door up high is shut. It's dark, so we won't put anything there. Got these in, and let's go ahead and put this one in that's over the little family room thing. And the top window up here is dark, so don't put the light in it. That's up in the attic, and there's nobody up there. That's just kind of quickly throwing a little yellow white in there, not trying to be too precise or anything, but just covering up toward the bottom of the window glass. And then we're going to get some dark values up in the top. There's probably curtains at the windows, or there, even if there's not, you're just kind of looking back through the room, and I'm seeing some burnt sienna. I'm going to add just a little touch of cad red light to that burnt sienna. Okay, we're working the windows now, so again, kind of start from the beginning here. We put some yellow that's got just a little bit of white in it, and put that in your windows. And then we're going to add some shadow colors, a little bit darker values. Start out with probably just a little bit of orange up toward the top and pull it down kind of over the yellow just a little bit. Don't lose all of the yellow. All of this is such tiny bits of color, so you don't get a whole bunch of anything. A little bit of raw umber could go up to the top, tiny little bits of it, and kind of drag it down over the orange just a wee bit. Or you could use little touches of burnt sienna, is fine. Just you get, when you see a lit window, you also see a lot of the shadows and stuff that's back inside the house. Maybe there's some curtains at the window or something to kind of block the bright yellow-white color of the lamps and so forth that's in there. And that's what we're trying to do. We're getting it darker at the top, little tiny bits. I'm going to finish a window out here so you can see how they're finished out, and then they'll all be done the same. So once I get enough yellow and little touches of orange, I'm switching here to my liner, pat it in there. You feel like you've got some glow at the bottom that's light and a little darker at the top, which is kind of what we're looking for. Then take your liner and a little bit of raw umber, and we'll divide it up into, first into 4 panes. You can thin this paint just a little bit for the raw umber right on the tip of the brush, and then divide it a couple more times across, and you've got a 6-pane window. Sometimes I kind of tweak it along the edge of the shutters there just to put a little dark line there. Coming on down. I'm going to finish this whole window out so you can see. And the shutters themselves are raw umber and white. And what you'll probably want to do maybe is do all of the window glass and then the shutters, but I just want to finish this one entirely. And this is a light value. I need a little bit lighter than that. This is white with the raw umber for the shutters. So it looks like kind of the gray white. And I'm just using the liner to paint these because they are very small. Of course, they have to be somewhat lighter than the wall or they won't show up at all. Have a little bit of a line across the top and across the bottom. And you can have less detail on these if you choose than I put on mine. I put a little dark line under the sill, right there, kind of under the bottom portion. and I took my little liner and put like little hearts up there. Just 2 little strokes makes it look like a heart in the top of the windows, shutters. And then you can pick up just a little bit of white, a little bit of snow, and I laid a little bit of snow across the bottom of the windowsill. Now you don't have to do all of that. If you don't like to do a lot of tiny detail, then I would suggest making the windows a little bit more simple. You still need the shutters on each side, but you know, you don't have to do the little hearts in the top or some of the real extreme detail. But that would be a finished window. But then I'll go ahead and come back in with my oranges and rust colors and finish out the window glass like we were doing earlier. So orange, little orange, and then some raw sienna, a little bit of burnt sienna maybe, with some dark values at the top. I like the light in the windows to look a little smudgy. So I'll come in and kind of pat this down, and if you lose too much of the yellow white, you can put a little more back in. And some you may not want to see as much anyway, because they don't all have to be exactly alike. Depends on how the light's shining through the dark curtains and so forth. So after the yellow, I'm going to pick up the orange, put a little of that in there, and then go into the dark sienna, raw umber, whatever values you want to use for your dark. Get too much dark in there, put some more yellow in there and just make them look like the lights are on. I always like to do a little fine detail on some things, and other people don't want so much detail, so you can have more or you can have less. Your choice. Sometimes I like to put just a little touch of snow on some of those little pane lines, but that it's kind of hard while it's also wet, so we can skip that. A little bit of dab of pure white or a little yellow white, kind of in a couple of panes, gives you a lot of sparkle to your windows. That does look good. Just a little thicker yellow white in there, and it looks like you got little spots of light in the windows. We're just continuing on here with our windows. A little bit in that door glass. This little window almost gets lost back here behind all of the posts and the thing that's in front of it. Around the Christmas tree, I didn't paint the Christmas tree, but you can paint around it and just put a little bit of the yellow white there. Move back over here and find the Christmas tree one. And let's paint a little glow around the Christmas tree in the room. So it's more of a yellow-white to begin with. And then we'll have just a little bit of the orange or touch, just a speck of the burnt sienna or the reds, just a little tiny bit around the perimeters of it. When you get that done, you can take a little bit of your Payne's Gray and maybe a touch of the raw umber and paint the little Christmas tree. It's just going to be dark. It's just a little tree. Won't particularly even look green. I guess if you want a green, you could have just a little touch of yellow in the Payne's Gray. That would make a black green color, but doesn't really have to appear green. In the window, it's just going to look dark. And pat out your little branches and make a little Christmas tree shape. And be sure you have the light already around it before you do the tree. Don't do the tree and then the light. Gotta put the light around it so it has a glow. Get your little tree in there, and then you can dab a few little ornaments on with the liner and a little bit of orange or red or yellow. Whatever little ornaments you want to hang on your tree. Touch of white or yellow white, just little dots. Hopefully they'll stick. If you can't get them to stick, you can wait and put them on after it dries, but it's more fun to do it now. And there's the little tree in the window. I'll go back to doing some detail on the window panes. With my little liner and some of the burnt umber, we'll continue on with the little pane lines in the windows. And your shutters are kind of a gray color with your raw umber and white. Once it's back in the shadows in these darker walls, your shutters would also be a little bit darker. Okay, let's paint this little attic window up here. It's just a very dark window. No lights are on up here. So just paint it dark. This is just a little bit of raw umber. And then along the outside edge for the frame, I think I'll switch to my liner for that. It just seems like it'd be a little easier. And use just some white and raw umber. So you've got about the same colors you've used for your shutters. Would be fine. Maybe just a little bit more white than I got right there. And it will pop away from the wall better if you clean your brush and pick up a little bit of your dark again, like some more raw umber. And work a little of that along the outside edge of your frame. And that will pull it away from the wall, make it show up. It's just kind of up there in the shadows anyway, so we don't really want it to be too prominent. And then I'll take just a little bit of that lighter value, the white with the raw umber, and put a couple of little pane lines in there. It's something that'll barely show. Doesn't want to stick. There we go. So there's the little top window. Now then, let's move down and catch. We've got a door over here that isn't done, and we've got another one on the other side by our Christmas tree. Let's start with this little door here. And again, it's just kind of a brown color. I'm going to use a little bit of the raw umber, maybe just a little bit of white with it. This is a shut door. A little bit of it comes on down to the bottom of the porch floor. And then again, there's with the liner, I'm going to put a little bit of that light tan color around it for a frame. Our frame doesn't show up much against the background, but again, I'm going to do it like I did around the other little frame. I'm going to sketch a little dark line to the outside of the frame, and then it shows up. Now then, the people can get out onto their little porch up there. And just for a little trim or something, I'll put a little line in the door and something to make it look like you've got a screen or some kind of detail on the door. Okay, the main thing that's left here, and let's do it while I'm here, is the porch railings and the porch banisters. There's a dark line and then a light line to make them show up, and I'm going to put the dark line in first, and that's just raw umber, and I'm thinning the paint down a little bit with my perp. And from here, there's the railing up here, and this one drops down, and it comes right in front of that window, and it comes down toward the ground, to the ground. There's the dark line, and then here's another dark line for this other rail post, big long post. And then these up here are short. A little bit right there, let's see. These go across. And there's these here. Once you get the dark in there, it makes them show up a little better, and then a white, which will be pretty white, so it'll show up. And you put the light line next to the dark line, not right on top of it, but next to it. Doesn't want to stick too much right here. Let's try to get it to where we can see it. And have to come back to that one after it tacks up a little bit. Get that light line to stick. Here it does a little better. There's my little porch up there with the porch posts that come all the way down toward the ground. And there's a little bit of greenery up there. I'll go ahead and put that in. And the greenery is just a little bit of your blue and yellow to make kind of a dark green on your liner, and you're just going to put little swags in there.
For goodness sakes.
Looky there, we just swagged in that little bit of greenery. See, it just kind of drops down in a little swaggy line. Put a little bit on the door while I've got a little green in the brush. And then take a little bit of cad red light and tie your little ribbons up there. There's a little ribbon. Right at the post. See, you got a little red there. Little ribbons. Give it a festive look. And then you can drop on down to the door and put a little bit of a ribbon on the door. It looks like Christmas. And then we'll step back and look at this one for a minute. Okay, we did finish all the windows. I think some of these I did while I wasn't on the camera, but they're all done the same basically. But I didn't come back and put my little heart shapes in each one of these little shutters. And like I said, this stuff's optional. Depends on how much detail you like to play with. But 2 little strokes creates a little heart. You just kind of go one way and then the other, and you've got little heart shapes cutouts in your shutters if you so desire. And they're just real quickly done. Here's some over here. They don't have to be too perfect at all. And then moving over here, there's some more. And I guess that's probably all of them.
Now, what color did you use for those?
There's one here. This is raw umber.
Raw umber, okay.
Raw umber. And then that only leaves us one door left that I haven't done, so we'll move down here to this little side room where the Christmas tree is and paint that door. And so I'm picking up, I'm going to go in with my flat brush and pick up a little bit of the raw umber and a little white. So we've kind of got that gray color again going. And we'll paint our door. Let's get it just a little bit lighter. I'll run a little dark line down the side of it on each side. Across the top so it shows up better. Put a little doorknob right about there. It's going to be some little steps down from the door, but we really need to get the ground and the bushes painted before we add the little steps. There's steps here and over there under the porch as well, but we'll wait till our grass is done, or the bushes are done and the snow. And then we can indicate some little steps. So at this point, I think we're pretty much through with the house. You can take a look and see if there's anything you want to add back to your painting when you get to this stage here. And you can even let it tack up or dry completely and then come back and add other detail if that would be something that you think would be easier done later. So, you know, all of this little stuff, shading around the shutters and little bits of highlighting the windows and all those things can be added at any time. But I think we're ready at this point for our bushes that's under the house. A little bit here, and I'm going to start working with a small brush and working around the snowmen and the little sign and the little girl's head and anything that's kind of up over the bushes, because we have to stay behind that. So I'm going to pick up Payne's Gray and a little bit of raw umber for the dark value that we'll be putting down first, and coming around the little girl, pat carefully around her little hat and anything that would be behind her head. Get around the snowman's face. My brush is a little bit wet. Dry it off here. Once we get away from all this small detail, you could go to a bigger brush if you want, or you can stick with the same brush. It doesn't matter for this detail. Okay, that's everything I think that's likely to get painted out if you're not careful. Then I think I'll go ahead and switch to the bottom corner of my small background brush. So this is, well, it gives you a little softer edge. Pick up a little more paint. Work on the side of the brush, just the side of the brush, and pat it in. Some of your little bushes will come up a little higher and some will be a little lower, so don't make them all exactly even at the top. We'll come in with some snow on them when we get them all finished. Come in under the door. Got little bushes over there under the window where the Christmas tree is. I'll run this side as well. Nice dark base coat. Porch is also going to be some little steps, but right now we're just going to put the dark under there because we can add steps later. We've got a pretty nice little dark bush here at the corner of the house. That's a pretty good base coat. I can see a little bit of white canvas through here, but by the time we get our snow on there, that'll probably all be covered up. So there we go for our base coat on the bushes. Okay, after you get your dark in here, that it has a nice little irregular, uneven look, take your a little bit of the yellow white, just a little bit of yellow with the white on the small background brush on the corner and right under the windows. You can tap just a little bit of highlight on the bushes there that would look slightly greenish because of the light from the windows hitting the bushes. Now this is a light touch, folks. Don't put a lot of pressure on this because it'll mush it all up too much. You still want to see a lot of the dark base coat on the bushes also. So you want a real feathery, kind of airy look. And the yellow white, again, is more under the windows. And the rest of it would be more of just a white, like a little snow. Tap very, very lightly. Light touch, folks. Light. No pounding. Once you get away from the windows, your little highlights could be white, or even a little blue-white would be pretty back in the shadows. Well, it doesn't have to be really green, but if you have just a little bit of greenish look in there, that's fine, or just more white is fine. Just get a little highlight in there. And over in here where it's all in the shadows, it's going to be more of a blue-white. Kind of picking up some of your base color there would make a blue-white. And then again, right in under the windows is where the light would be maybe touching in with more yellow-white under where the Christmas tree is. Yellow, white, a little orangey white that also makes it look warm and highlighted. Orangey white with touches of yellow white. That's pretty. Get the light on the bushes. Doesn't hurt to come back too after it tacks up a little bit to put more light on it if you can't get it to stick while it's all wet. It doesn't have to be done all at once. You can always come back the next day or whatever and highlight again. But for right now, I think that's enough on the bushes. Okay, we're going to paint the tree next, but before we paint the tree, I'd like to get just a little bit of the snow up against the tree. I think let's go ahead and work with our small background brush on this snow. And that's going to be white with just a little bit of Payne's gray in the white. And maybe sometimes a touch of the blue could go in there, a little ultramarine blue. Part of the snow is whiter and some of it's a little bluer. I'm going to just start right in here with a little bit of the blue right under the background trees. Coming over against the big tree there, and a little bit on the other side. You've got room, I think. There's a little area there that needs to be snow that's right there at the edge of the canvas. And then right in through this middle section here, it's a little bit whiter. Wipe the brush and pick up a little bit more white. And as you come out in under the bushes a little bit, catch into the bush color a wee bit and let it pull out into the snow. We don't want just a hard line under the bushes. I'm going to come down next to the little sled. The snowman. So now we've got everything over against the tree, and I'm going to stop and paint the tree. We could go ahead and paint all the snow back in behind, but I think we'll just at this point, and you could do that if you'd rather paint all the snow and then come back to the tree, but we're going to stop and paint our tree right here. So we've got everything behind the tree filled in like that, so we could easily paint our tree next. Okay, we've got a little snow back here, and we're going to go ahead and work our tree. You'll want to use your detail flat brush, I think. Probably your number 8. Don't get a brush that's too big for this because we've got some detail to do. The tree is raw umber with occasionally I picked up a little bit of Payne's gray with the raw umber. It's a dark tree to begin with, and be careful as you work around the little sled. The little sled is leaning up against the tree, so we'll kind of start there. You can use a little bit of medium along, but now I haven't picked up any yet. It just depends. If your paint feels real dry and isn't moving, you can get a small amount, but if you get too much in there, your paint will get so watery it won't look dark, and we want it to be dark. Sometimes if it's not covering the texture of the canvas well is when I'll dip in the medium and get just a little bit there to moisten the paint, and it goes down into the texture of the canvas easier. So you got that, and see right inside these little runners is going to be some of the tree color. So that leaves a little tiny line there for your runners. bottom one there has got snow behind it instead of a tree. Carefully work around the little holes in the sled right up here. Very small areas. Probably a little round brush or something smaller would have been better than the one I'm using right here. A tiny detail. If you lose some of the little runners, that's okay. We'll find them later when we do the sled, but try not to lose everything. Here we go on up the tree. Up in here's where I'm picking up a little bit of medium. And some of the little streaks that might occur as you're making the bark texture or basing it in, if it looks a little streaky, then just give it a little bark texture. So don't try to smooth all those little streaky strokes out. We'll just use them for bark texture. I've only put a few major limbs in. We've got lots more limbs than what I have shown on the pattern. So when you get up here, paint the ones that you see, and then we'll add more. Because we didn't want to have to paint around those limbs in the sky. That would be way too much trouble. Have a little bit more Payne's Gray toward the back of the tree. The tree's looking real brown. Then you can pick up some Payne's Gray and kind of sweep in at the back of the tree. You can even put just a little bit of the lavender on there. Some of that purple's kind of pretty in your tree. It blends right in, but you can see a little of it. I'm putting some little purple in right there if it shows up. I don't know if it will or not, but Looks kind of pretty in the tree. But once you get this many limbs in, then you've got to start ad-libbing some more limbs. So there's this one coming on out. Your limbs are just going to taper out as they go away from the tree. We can put some of them in now. You can put in limbs later. You can put them in after the sky is dry, if you prefer. But we want to try to put our limbs in an uneven pattern. Don't make a whole bunch of limbs come from one spot in the tree. You want to spread them out so that they're in different areas where they come into the tree. In other words, there's a limb coming out of here. Don't put another one coming here and another one coming here. That would be 3 or 4 limbs coming into one spot on the tree. If you got a limb here, come on up the tree a little bit and maybe put another one out here somewhere. And then up the tree and maybe one over here somewhere, but don't make them all come in at the same spot. Sometimes people do that because they don't know where to go with them. They just keep them coming from one spot and it looks like a broom. Okay, let's continue on with more of our little branches. Remember, we were talking about not putting too many in one spot. And when you do the little branches, where a branch connects to a larger branch, it's going to be thicker where it connects, and then as it pulls off, it gets thinner. The farther away it gets from the main tree, the more skinny your little branches become. And if you thin your paint with turp, it's better than trying to work with medium. Medium's a little too thick for nice, thin, skinny branches. And hold kind of back on your liner. Don't hold it like a pencil because then your hand's too heavy. And it's hard to get a nice, graceful little branch. Big trees have lots and lots of branches, and there's no way we can put in all of them. That would look way too busy on our canvas anyway, but just get in enough that it looks like a nice, graceful type tree with enough branches that it looks reasonable. And your ink needs to, or your paint needs to be as thin as ink. That makes it fall off the tip of the brush better. Pretty good size branch coming up this way. And I've got, probably needs one at least, pretty good sized branch coming down toward the house and even maybe over the edge of the house, because the tree is in front of the house, it's not behind it, so you can have a few branches over the edge of the house roof. Kind of helps to connect things. Kind of came up to the edge of the canvas and then down a little bit. It's better to pull your branches, or if you have leaves on it, which of course we don't on this one, but pull your branches at least a little more than halfway across the canvas. That helps to connect your canvas to the two sides. You don't want to split it right in half or keep everything on this side. That's why I kind of like to pull it on over, circle over the house a little bit. We've got, you can have some pretty good sized branches leaning the other way too, of course. You can just do branches till you think you have enough, and it's hard to say when enough's enough.
Lining them up.
When you get tired of them, I guess you got enough. And then we do have some snow on this tree. Now there's a little bit on the trunk, And for that, I would go back to my flat brush, your small flat, detail flat, maybe a size 8 or something like that. And let's come in with your paint on one side of the brush. And I just come in straight on with it, paint's facing out. And then chop it over a little bit into the tree and you get a bark texture pattern. Reload it when you run out. And I start it just a little to the outside edge of the tree. So rather than keeping it all inside the dark, start just a wee bit beyond the edge with your first bit of white. And then it just kind of fades out as you go back into the trunk. Looks a little lighter on the side facing the house. One side of the brush when you load it. And you can come in and have a little bit of snow on some of your branches. Again, you would put it above the branch. Bring that branch on into the tree a little further. Kind of wherever you want the snow to lodge, a little bit up in there at the top of the tree, top of the limbs. Every limb doesn't particularly have to have snow on it, but put it on some. You can take your liner and add it on some of the small limbs. Give them a snowy look. See, if you want a hole in the tree, you just chop around an area and that leaves a knot hole in the tree for the owls to come and live. Putting too much highlight down here toward the bottom, but maybe just a little bit to kind of give it a look that's not quite so flat. Okay, now then we're going to come on down into the foreground snow area, but we're going to start back here by the house, and we're going to come down to the little people and the little snowman and all of that detail down here. It might be a good idea to work around these little figures with a smaller brush like we did in some of the other areas where we were afraid we were going to get into the line work. So let's start down here and then we'll kind of work up there. The snowman is going to be whiter on this left side, and so I'm going to work my snow behind him just a little bit darker. And now remember, you're working with your white and paints gray, and sometimes a touch of the ultramarine blue can be worked in. Mostly it's painted gray and white, I think, for the most part. So I'm going to start with my little detail flat brush, and I'm working around my snowman. He's got his little gloves on there, and if you can just kind of at least leave a little bit of unpainted area so you know that's a glove, if you don't forget and paint it out shortly. And we'll come on around him, and we can always come back and adjust these colors too. This side of the snowman will be darker on the right side of the snowman. And so actually the snow on the ground on this side could be a little bit lighter. So when you're painting, always think of the fact that you're working light against dark when you separate objects. And so we'll continue to kind of, and then blend it out where we can get into it with a bigger brush in a minute. Come on around the little snowman there. You can pick up just a little touch of medium once in a while if your paint doesn't seem like it wants to move enough. Around the little boy. Your snow is going to be choppy anyway because they've been walking in it and rolling snowballs in it and all of that, so it's not like you want a real smooth snow area. It's going to have light and dark areas in it anyway. And after we paint the little people, we can come back and adjust the snow too, if necessary. Don't want the snow too dark. Out here toward the center, the lights from the house would shine out there and so forth. Now I'm going to be careful here because I'm coming in right around my little face on the boy. Don't want to wipe his face out. Get around him there. And then there's an area here between the two that's got a little bit of dark areas, and it'll have some light in it too. The snowball there that he's rolling is going to be lighter on the top, so I'll put a little bit more dark on the ground around it. Right around the little girl. I think that one's a girl. I think the other little person is a boy, and he's a little boy down there. So we're getting all of his areas worked around there, and we'll come back later and lay some other colors in on top of the ground to create some brighter, lighter areas and maybe some more shading, just whatever needs to be done. Once you get up here though, if you want to go switch brushes, and you don't have to if you're happy with the one you're using, go ahead and use it. But up here you could go to the bigger brush once you get away from all that little tiny detail, and it'll just brush in a lot quicker. And right in under these bushes up here, you want to catch a little bit of that dark up there and let it pull down into the snow.
And if it has dried too much,
if it's tacked up a little bit, pick up a little bit of Payne's Gray and kind of work in under the bushes so you've got a shadow there. Don't really like to see a real hard line. I like a softer line. Then kind of pull out that Payne's Gray that's a little darker there. And then I'm going to wipe the brush and come in with more white then into this center part. Get this section of snow at least based in. Dark kind of worked up here too, so you get that little choppy look to the snow. And I don't want it again to look too smooth because it wouldn't look right. They've been walking around in this snow, so they're going to be leaving footprints and chunks of snow kicked up here and there, and we don't want it too smoothie. up a little bit more dark in there too, right in through the center here. And then we should probably have this area at least blocked in. Just going to look up here again by my bushes, and I'm going to soften that hard line right there, but putting just a little bit more of the blue-gray up against the bushes. Maybe just a little bit of straight Payne's gray there just to kind of pull out that shadow. That looks better. Get rid of that hard edge. Okay. I want to have a little bit of sunlight, or not sunlight, it's more light from the house coming down into this snow, and it'll show up a little more if it is a little darker right here. So don't get your snow too white to begin with. Okay, we're going to move on over to the other side of the little people and the snowman. And there's going to be a little bit of snow under the sign. You have to kind of look carefully to see where this is going to be. Right in through there. Come over to his little hat. It's a little stick he's holding. If you lose the stick, it's okay. We'll put it in anyway. Come back and redo it. Down to the little boy's arm and kind of around in there, behind his head. Same general color, some of it's again a little darker, some's a little lighter. Variation so it doesn't look real flat. And then you've also got to put in some of this snow that's between the boy and the snowman. There's background there. The snowman is going to be real light on this left side of him, right there. And so with him I'm knowing that he's going to have to be lighter, I'm going to make the snow a little bluer right there, so there'll be nice contrast. So that should work right there. And then we've got to get in between his pant legs here. There's a little bit of ground. Can't see his foot on this. His little foot's sticking out on that side. This side you can't really see his foot. You're just looking at the back of him. And we'll get up here under these little bushes right in through there. There's going to be some light area coming out from that window, the window with the Christmas tree, but I'm going to kind of leave a little bit slightly unpainted, or a little bit lighter value at least of the blue paint. And then I'm going to come in with the bigger brush for the rest of this, because this is more just a large area here that's just flat snow. Just come in with your bigger brush and scrub it in. Go around the wreath down there. Don't lose the wreath, but paint out the little sticks that's there by the side of it. We don't need those. We can add those back. So I'll just kind of do some little scrubby strokes. Getting a little bit of variation of color. The color inside the wreath. I've drifted back in under those trees there so there's not a straight line back there. That should do it pretty well for this. It's too dark. For this little bit of snowy ground here. Okay, there's going to be just a little bit of a kind of suggestion of a little path or something up here toward the door, so I'm going to put a little bit of darker value right in there, and then in a little while we can add some more light as needed just to loosen that up. Again, right under that bush, I'm going to take a little more Payne's Gray, just straight Payne's Gray, and just pull a little bit out onto the ground there for a better shadow. Right in under the tree, in the shadow of the tree. Okay, we'll stop right there and look it over. We can come on down and paint the rest of this snow while we're here. This is going to be darker snow down in the foreground, so pick up a little more Payne's Gray with your white, or a little bit of blue can be added too, but it's darker. This is more shaded down here. Be careful around the little sled. You've got the little runners down there that we might not want to lose. Try to work around them. Hopefully we won't lose them. If we do, we would have to find them again. Oh, I think I just lost my runner. I'm going to work around here with smaller brush. And once I get away from the little sled area, I'll go into my bigger brush. So we'll go back to the small background brush, and that way it'll just move along much quicker. And just kind of little back and forth strokes is the rule. Make it look like it lays down. Ow! So it comes on across, it's going to get just a little bit more white. Each time you pick up more paint, you can get just, a little bit of variation to your colors, and some of this is going to look a little choppy down here because, again, the kids have been walking around in it, so don't try to smooth it out too much. A little bit of lavender is pretty in the snow too. You can pick up just a little bit of that ultramarine violet. Put it in the snow, it looks really pretty. Blend it in with your Payne's gray and white and whatever else is around there. And then once I've got this covered and I've got all my snow based in now, I'm going to come back with more Payne's gray right under the little snowman and put it in darker there and kind of pull it on out for a shadow. We want to really set it down. And the little boy standing there, he can have a little shadow out from him. So they look grounded and won't float that way. Everybody that's standing on the ground here, little people, the snowman, anything that's there needs a darker value underneath them. That's their shadow. You can just use some straight Payne's gray because it'll blend in with this white, lighter value that's there. It's pretty dark. Okay, once we've got the dark in there, we need to step back and look at it again and see what else we might need to do to it. Okay, we're going to paint the sled. I'm going to start with a little bit of raw sienna that's slightly thinned with just a touch, just a little touch of raw umber in it, so it's kind of a dark, kind of brownish color, but not too dark. And work it up and down. I'm working on the side of the brush, so I get little streaks, kind of streak it in. A little bit of moisture in there would be helpful, a little bit of medium. Don't get it too dark because it'll run into the tree color, so we want it to be light enough it looks different from the tree. Got some medium in there. Little end of it here, you got the little thing here where you can hold on the top and on around. Since I get it kind of streaked in light, I'll come in with just a little more raw umber. And again, I'm working more on the side of the brush, not the whole flat, because I want to get some little streaks to suggest board lines. You can actually put in a few little board lines. Some of these small areas may require a liner to come in and get some of these little shapes kind of reshaped. Right there, there's this little, there's a little piece of wood or something, little support thing going up there. And there's going to be a little piece right here that kind of helps steady the front of the sled there. The liner works better than a flat brush. If you have a little pointed brush of any kind, that would help. with the liner, that would also give you some nice little cracks in the wood. Lines coming along. I'm going to tone the sled down a little bit. Mine's just a wee bit on the bright side. Still yet. A little bit more raw umber there on the shadowed side. That looks better. Okay, the little runners are just a gray-white. They would be little metal runners. So a little bit of white with Payne's gray in it should work okay for those. Just make it light enough they'll show up against the tree. A little bit of thin the paint just a little bit with some turp so it'll mark off. The runners should be light, but not too white. If they're too white, put a little more Payne's gray in there and tone them down a little bit. There's the end of that runner. You just barely can see that. So it looks like a little sled. Take a little bit of the raw umber tree color and kind of come up into the little runners. If they get too fat, you can skinny them down with tree color. And these little guys that go down into the snow here on the ground, the little ends of the runners, just so they kind of show up. Make it just a little bit lighter so they'll show up. Whatever is needed for contrast, you can come in with some more dark next to the light if that would help your contrast. It usually does to put just a little dark against the light, right next to the light, and you can see the runners better. Highlight up here on the end of the sled. More dark lines. And I think it's probably close enough. That looks like a little sled against the tree. So we'll leave that one alone for now. Let's use our detail flat brush, and we're going to paint the snowman. And he doesn't have a head, but start on the back side of him over here. And this is pretty dark on your Payne's gray. Get quite a bit of Payne's gray there, and kind of follow the contour of the body. And then as you're coming on around, he's going to pick up more white. As you come around, he gets lighter. So kind of wipe the brush and pick up some more white and still continue. Kind of little short choppy strokes is good because, you know, they're just patting snow on here. He's not too smoothed out. So just kind of overlap your dark, catch into the edge of it, and then work your dark coming on around. And then after you get over past the center, it's going to go lighter. So you want to wipe the brush and pick up white. Come around on the outside edge of him. Over here with white. Put it in, and then again, just little short patting strokes and follow the curvature of him. Don't go up and down. This is a round objects. So you kind of go with the circular round shape. You can soften into the dark there a little bit so we don't wind up with just a dark line there at the back. Want him to be just fading back, and again, little short choppy strokes that show some of the texture of the snowman, because he's not real smooth. And then there he is. And be sure that he has enough dark under him that he looks like he's sitting on the ground and casting a shadow. So you don't want to get that real light right under him, because that way he kind of looks like he's floating. So he wants to sit down, and I pulled just a little bit of white snow kind of off to the side there, like he's got a little edge of snow there that's whiter, a little drift kind of under it. So he sits down. Okay, and once you've got him in there, then go to your liner and dip it in a little bit of turp and then just a little bit of your raw umber. And he's going to have a couple of arms out there that's just little sticks. The kids have stuck some sticks in there. This one starts here and kind of comes out and bends up a little bit. It could do whatever you want it to do. Just don't make it too long. The other one's coming out from the other side of his body. There's another little stick. And then just a little bit of your cad red light on your liner and give him a little glove. Like a little mitten. See, there's the thumb of the mitten and the back of it there. This one's got a little mitten on too. That'll keep his hands warm. He stands out in the snow. This little stick looks like it had a little branch coming off of it. I could clean it off or I could leave it. It doesn't really matter. Okay, that's the headless snowman. And next we'll paint the little boy. Okay, after your snowman is done, let's paint the little boy. You're going to need a little tiny brush for his face. A little liner's okay. If you have something else with a little sharp tip on it, that would also work. I don't know, the liner might be just a little bit too small. Let me I'll use the corner of my little flat brush. I think that might work better, just to get his little face in there. Okay, take a little touch of burnt sienna in your white. You're going to make a flesh tone, so it doesn't take but just a tiny little bit of burnt sienna. That's your reddish brown. Just a tiny little bit of it in your white, so you get kind of a flesh color, skin tone color. Takes very little. And then right here where his little face is, we're just going to give him a little bit of that flesh tone. Mine could be just a little bit darker. Okay. His face is not going to amount to a whole lot. There's enough skin tone right in there, I think. Then I'll go to my liner, and we're going to get just a little bit more right here so you can see. I'm going to pink his cheeks up just a little bit. I'm going to take a little bit more burnt sienna with just a touch of red and white. Burnt sienna and just a speck of cad red light in it with your white, so you get a pink. He's been out in the snow long enough, his little cheeks are looking pretty pink. Now don't get them too bright red, but just a little bit there. I'm going to kind of outline these little features just a little bit. You don't see him very good, but there's a little bit of a nose there, and kind of under his chin, make it show up just a little bit darker. And then take a little tiny touch of raw umber and put his eye about where you think an eye should be. He's looking we're looking at the side of his face, so his eye would be somewhere probably like right in there. And then again, just a little touch of burnt sienna to make a suggestion of a mouth. I trace around him here just a little tiny bit so he shows up more. He's too small to have very much of a face showing here. And his eye too big. The little features don't need to amount to too much because they're very small people. And he's going to have a hat on, and his hat is raw umber with just a little touch of raw sienna for his hat. This will go all over the back of his head here. I'm just kind of using my liner for this. He's got like a little, I don't know, it's a little cap of some kind with a little bill that comes out there a little ways. I think his bill came out too far there. Cut some of it off. The back of his cap, you can even have just a little yellow and white would be fine, just something that looks a little bit brighter right here at the very back of the cap. Kind of comes down, has some ear flaps on it, looks like. A little bit of yellow at the back. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and paint the little guy's jacket. And, well, I'll tell you what, let's paint his pants first, because they're kind of under the jacket. So let me change my mind and do those first. The pants are kind of a mixture of your raw umber and Payne's gray and white. So you've got kind of a grayish white. And the back, so you can see part of his back leg, and I'm going to paint that first, and it's darker. It's going to come kind of along here. Pretty dark. His little shoes are down here. They're just little dark shapes at the bottom of his leg there. He's all squatted down, so he looks kind of funny. His little rear end back here is dark too, kind of rounds out right there. And right along here is kind of the edge of his little jacket, which comes down. There's his knees. This is his other pants that's on this side, which are the same color, only with more white. Well, in front of you, they're still kind of a dark value, but not quite as dark as the back ones. A little more white in it here. But sticking there on the back of his pants it's kind of right here. I painted out the shoe. It went away in the snow somewhere. But it's right about there is his shoe, one of them, and the other one you just see a little piece of it on the other side, somewhere like in there. little knee kind of bent over right there. You can kind of get it in. His pants in there, and then his little jacket. And again, you've got a back arm that's going to be darker. And get a little shading under his jacket there. And then the rest of his coat is kind of a blue-gray too. I'm not too sure. Maybe we should make it kind of a little bit different color than the original one. I made it more of a blue-gray, but it seemed like things kind of run together. Maybe if we made this one just a little bit of a dark green, it might be better for a little bit more contrast. I'm going to make a dark green with a little bit of my ultramarine blue and yellow. It's not quite yellow enough. Get his coat. If it looks much different or not, but it's just a little bit of a green there. So we've got a little different color. And then his front sleeve would be a little darker. You got to, it's just separation between light and dark on this stuff. Because he's all stooped over. He looks a little funny, but we'll give him a shadow under that sleeve, make his arms show up. This little boy seems like he's a little harder than the others because he's so stooped over, I think. He's pushing that snowball, though. Be sure you've got shadows underneath him, too. Get him to look like he's fairly good, and then take a little red on your liner and give him a little scarf that's kind of fluttering away at the back there. He's working hard. Okay, he's going to have some little gloves on, but we won't put his gloves on until we get the snowball made, because the snowball's behind the gloves. Okay, when you've got his little body made, clean your brush and pick up your blue-gray first to start the snowball. So the bottom of it would be just a little darker. His hand's going to be right there at the bottom too, but we're going to put a little gray-blue there. Needs to be just a little bit lighter. And the top of the snowball would be the brightest because it's where the light would catch it. When you got his snowball in there, then I'm probably just going to use my liner to do the little hands, these little gloved hands. There's his hands. He's got his mittens on. I need a little bit of shading right there at the bottom of the snowball where I missed it. And again, of course, be sure you've got enough dark underneath the Snowball and under him and everything to create a little shadow so he looks like it's sitting on the ground okay. And there he is with his little snowball being made for the head of the snowman. And that will be good for this one. And we'll move on to the others. Okay, we're going to paint the little girl next that's back here. And she's going to be, her little face is going to be done first. And similar colors like we did for the little boy. You can use that same general mix of burnt sienna and white for the flesh tone and just kind of dab in for a little face. Just dab her in there. He's got a little hat on, so you don't need to get out onto the hat. And then we'll go to the liner. I'm going to have just a tiny little bit of raw umber in the liner for her eyes. They would be somewhere about here. Upper part of her face. There's two little eyes, and they're just little tiny dots. And I put just a little suggestion right there for a nose. It doesn't need to be very much, just kind of a little hint of a nose. And then her little mouth is, I use just a little tiny bit of red for her mouth. Don't want a big splash of red in there, but just tiny little touch. Get her mouth too big. She's kind of a small little person. And again, kind of under her face, if you want to put, we should have done this probably before we did her features, but you can have just a little bit of the burnt sienna white mix to put a little shading at the edge of her face if you've got room to do it, just kind of where your outline is there. Come around and give her face just a little bit of a shadow. And that's good enough for her little features. That looks fine. And then she's got a kind of a green hat on. Probably go back to the corner of my flat brush for that. Or again, if you have a little round pointed brush, that would even be better probably. And I'm going to make a green, kind of like the little boy's jacket. It's blue with just a little touch of yellow. And I'm just tapping it. Now this is not a bright green, it's kind of a dull green. Looks like a nice little cap. And right at the top of it, we're going to put some yellow white, like the light from the windows was hitting it. Just a little bit of yellow white around the back of her cap. See, that pops it out from the wall, or not the wall, but the bushes behind. Tiny little bits of color is all that you need. And this is kind of like a little scarf thing, I guess, comes on around under her chin with a little taps of the darker green. You can see a little bit of it comes away from the back there. Okay, she looks cozy in her hat. And her coat is going to be kind of a rusty red. And we have time to get to that. A little bit of raw umber with a touch of cad red light in it would be a nice dark value right against the snowman. And she's got a little snowball in her hand, so don't cover Snowball up. And under her arms is darker to make her sleeve show up. Just kind of tapping these little bits of color in there. And all around the snowman with a little more to the burnt umber. little areas. And to make her coat lighter back here, I just simply picked up a touch of white with the red and tapped it in. If you just kind of pat it, it makes it look kind of fuzzy and soft. I lost the shadow under her arm, so I'll put it back in. When you paint clothes, it's just like anything else. When you change from like an arm to the bottom of the coat or whatever, you've got to have light against dark for your contrast, or everything runs together and you don't have any separation and you won't like it. Kind of on that very outside edge, you could even go a little step lighter and put just a little touch of orange out there on the edge of her sleeve. That makes it look like the light's hitting it. Orange or a touch of yellow and white over there, just a little bit of sunshine, or not sunshine, but light shines from the window on her shoulder over there. So she shows up. Okay, next we're going to paint the little snowman. And I'm going to start with a little blue-gray for the shadows up here under his hat on the head. Come around just right under the hat brim. A little dark there. And then I'm going to clean the brush off and dry it well. And I'm going to pick up white for the other side. A little bit of white. Maybe I might have just about half a speck of orange in that white, just to make it just a little bit less stark white. And I'm going to go ahead and paint the other side of the face, painting out the little features. They'll come back. And soften into the shadow color there, so just kind of overlap it and let it blend in. And then we'll come down on the body. I'll leave his little face unpainted for now. Come down on the body, and again get your blue-gray going on. That's your Payne's gray and white again. Maybe a touch of ultramarine blue could be added in there. And I'm going to come right on the chest area, behind the little arms and his little hands, and up here under his neck scarf. Put a little blue there. I'll put some under the arms. And there's going to be some blue-gray kind of on this side of, well, there's a little lady without her boots on, or her slacks. Forgot about that. We'll come back to her. Blue gray, all of this is more in shadow. Get your whole side there kind of darkened in. A little bit of medium doesn't hurt. We'll get the blue gray around the bottom too. Here. And then I'll wipe the brush or clean it. Just clean it, dip it and wipe it. And again, come back to the white. Now then, we'll have, the arms are going to be whiter. Right there. Inside the chest, and I'm blending into the blue-gray where the colors touch. Just blend it in. under here, and then we'll come in with some white along the outside edge of the body. Be sure you're going to have contrast with the background. And if not, we'll darken the background a little bit. Put more shadow on the snow that's on the ground. Might add just a little bit more blue out there just to make your contrast a little stronger. And soften the base of him down into the snow because he's just kind of got some snow underneath him there probably that's been kicked up, so it's not all a hard edge at the bottom. It looks like he's standing in the snow better. Okay, here's a little arm here. I'm kind of painting out the stick there that was holding the sign, but we'll put it back in. I have just a little bit of shadow against this outside arm to make it like curve around a bit. Under there, just softening those shadows a little bit. Okay, it's looking pretty good. Increase my shading a little bit just to get things to show up. Okay, I'm going to take the liner and I'm going to dip it in the Payne's Gray and Raw Umber mixture just for a nice dark. And let's find his eyes. He's got one over here and kind of one over here. His head's turned a little bit to the side. And then for his little mouth, which would be about here, we'll just give him a little smile with little bits of black. And then he's got a little carrot nose, which would be orange. Just a little bit of your cat orange. Set it down right there and just kind of pull it off to the side. Let it go off to a little taper. And that makes the nose. And he needs some buttons on his front. There's a little button there and maybe one there, and then he's got 2 or 3 down here. There he goes. And then he needs a little scarf around his neck, and we'll give him a little green scarf with your yellow, blue, and white mixture. That'll make kind of a nice green. And with your liner, just come around the neck. Just a little bit of the tail of the scarf coming off behind him there. A little bit darker green. Alright, now let's give him a hat. I'll go back to the little flat brush for the hat. Pick up your Payne's Gray Raw Umber mixture again, and we're going to paint the little hat. Brim the hat around that way. And then the top of the hat, you want to leave a little bit of an area unpainted right at the very top for a little highlight, so we can get it to show up against the dark trees back there. We'll have some highlight on there. We're going to lose the hat in the background darkness. So I'm going to switch to my liner again and pick up just a little bit of the yellow white, which would be a little reflection from the windows. And put a little light edge on his hat. come around on the brim of the hat. Let's put just a little highlight there. Around. Got just a little bit more white there, maybe to get it to show up a little better. There's his hat. I think that'll pull away from the background pretty well. He needs a little touch of red up there on his hat for the decoration. We'll give him a little red hat band there. And there he is. Okay, we're going to paint the little sign up here. His little ho-ho sign. If you'll pick up just a little bit of raw umber in your white, just enough to make kind of a gray, brown, tan color. Don't get it too dark. And paint the little sign, paint across the number or the letters. And then to make it show up a little better, I took the liner and a little extra raw umber and come down the side and across the bottom so it shows up better. It shows up fine at the top because that's light against the dark bushes. And then while you've got the liner in your hand, if you can see where the stick comes down, if you can't, it's just right there in the middle and comes down into his arm right there. And then out the other side of his arm, it comes on down a bit. Just a dark brown. Like that. And then his lettering for his ho-ho is red, red light. And you can write ho-ho. My ho-ho doesn't look very good. Sorry about that. I'm going to erase it and do it again. Run out of room. This just shows you how you can erase something. I'm sure you needed to know that. Hey, the little pink on the sign even looks better. Okay, that's good enough. Now I'll try to get my letters a little smaller. Add red light again. Start way over here. Oh. Oh. There we go. That's not perfect, but it'll do for now. Okay, let's go back and finish the little girl. We left her half finished a while ago while we moved on to other things. Take a little Payne's Gray and we'll paint her slacks down here, little pants that she's got on there to keep her legs warm. And we'll just paint those a dark value like that. Just a little Payne's Gray's good. Bring it down to about to there. And just to make it look like she had the little bit of a toe of a boot or something on, take just a little bit of white and just put just a little suggestion of the toe of a shoe or something right there across her foot. It doesn't take very much to look like there's a little something there. She's got some kind of little boots or shoes on. And then move up here, she's got a little bit of snow in her hand that she's getting ready to put on the snowman. So just take a little white and just put a little bit of that right there in her hand. And then she's got a little glove on, and I'll take the liner for that. And just a little bit of Payne's Gray or your Payne's Gray raw umber mixture and put a little bit of her hand and a finger or something out there just holding her bit of snow that she's got. Doesn't need to show up too much there, but needs a little bit of highlight across the bottom maybe of her glove, so it looks like that it's there. That should do it enough to make it show up. Okay, I believe that she is done. Put just a little bit more dark right under her foot there, so she looks like she's got a shadow as she's standing there in shadows. Okay, now then let's move over to the other side of the snowman and we'll paint the little boy in his jacket. Pick up a little bit of raw umber with just a little touch of white. Maybe a touch of, let's add just a little bit of raw sienna in there too, so you've got a little brown tan color. And I'm going to start with his little head. All we're seeing is the back of his head, so we'll get the little hood that comes up over here. And just pat it in. It's going to have just a little bit more light right around the front, or the top, I guess I should say, of it. Just a little bit more white, if we can get that to stick there. Put a little bit of an edge on there that catches some of the light. And then we'll come on down with his arm. This is still that just the same kind of tan color. His hand's kind of on the back of the snowman. Just a little bit darker there. And then we'll come down through the middle of his coat, and that's kind of dark in the center, maybe just a little bit more to the raw umber. We'll leave a little light edge over there on this right side to catch the light from the windows. Kind of dark under that arm. He's got the other arm kind of held up, so all you're seeing is the portion of his arm down to his elbow. A bit of that tan color there that's slightly lighter. To get just a little bit more dark there to kind of balance it off and not get it all too light. The jacket stops right about there. And then he's going to have a little bit light edge there on this side of his jacket, just a little touch of yellow white, or the yellow white might be better than the raw sienna, and white would probably also work well. Just get a little bit of light there on the edge. Across the bottom. And then the pants are the same general color. A little bit of dark right there under the coat. Little leg over here. I've got his little knee bent over there a bit. Foot sticks out a little bit there with his shoe. This one you don't see his shoe so much, the way he's standing. And again, I'm going to take just a little extra white, maybe a touch of yellow, a little bit of yellow with it, and come right down the edge of his slacks right there, his little pants, and highlight it just a little bit. That's maybe a little bit too white. I'm going to add just a touch of yellow just to make the light from the windows hit on him. If you get too much, just take a little more of your raw umber and work it back the other way, and that gets rid of some of it. Just a little bit to show up, and maybe a tiny bit on the other side too. In this little area here, maybe just a wee bit of light. A little yellow. Okay, it's just a little yellow along this sleeve. On the side of his hood. Okay, he's got a little scarf on. We'll just give him a little green scarf too, or maybe a red scarf. He might want a rather have a red scarf. A little dark red around his neck, and a little bit down on the side of his back there, a little bit trailing in the wind there. I think he's done. Be sure that he looks like he's standing in the snow and that he's not floating, so we want to make sure we have a little dark shadow kind of right in under him and kind of off to the side. Create a little reflection, little shadow. Okay, so there's those little people building their snowman. Next thing we'll do is move to over here to where we're going to have a little twiggy looking bush, and we'll hang a wreath from it. That'll be next. Okay, we're going to put our little twigs in first, so I'm taking my liner and a little bit of thinned raw umber, and thin it with your brush cleaner, your turp, rather than the medium. That makes it a little nicer and easier to come off the brush. And we're going to have some little crookedy looking limbs over here. I'll get it wetter still yet. It has to be like ink. These are very loosely painted little twigs. Make them different height. Come in different angles out of the ground is fine. The one that's going to have the wreath on it could be fairly sturdy. Some of them reach out further than others. This is just kind of filler down here at the corner of the canvas. Probably enough twigs. And let's make it look like they've got a little bit of a shadow behind them, so where they hit the ground, just pull out a little shadow, slightly darker value than what's already there on your ground. Creates a shadow. Sometimes I like to put just a little bit of lighter snow up against them too. Should have done that before we added the shadows, I suppose, but we can get a little bit in anyway. Just to rough up the ground there a little bit. And you can also have a little bit of white snow on some of the little twigs. If you want to lay that in, lay it next to the twig instead of right in it. It can be just little bits of snow. You don't have to cover the whole twig. It can have it on some and not on others. Okay, now we're going to paint our little wreath. Just go back to your detail flat brush. I'm going to make a very dark green. I can use the blue and Payne's gray mixture, ultramarine blue, Payne's gray, and just a tiny little bit of yellow, so you've got a black green, really dark green. Don't start it too yellow green. Want it to be kind of a dark value of green. And our little wreath is here, so I'm just going to kind of tap. You want it to look uneven. And we'll just tap it, make it look kind of round. You just threw that little wreath right over that little twig. We'll fix the twig a little bit better. It's not going to have very much yellow in it. You might have just a yellow-green. I mean, you might have something slightly lighter up toward the edge. Catch just a little bit of the light from the window. That's probably good enough. And then with the liner, I'm going to pick up my cad red light again. And we'll just put a little ribbon on the wreath. We could put it at the top or at the bottom, whichever way we want it to go. Tie a little bow, make it look like a bow. A little part of it hanging down a bit. And I'm going to highlight it with just a little touch of orange, just to make it look a little bit brighter on the edge. Just a bit of orange. Okay, now I'm going to come back and reinforce the little stick here. See, it's kind of going up into that and out the other side. So it looks like the wreath is on the end of it there. Okay. Okay, we're going to do just a little bit more detail on the house. A few little places I'd like to touch and maybe a little bit more highlight on the snow, and then we'll call it done. With my liner, I'm going to pick up a little bit of white. And I'm coming right over the top of the little shutters, the little windows up there, if you can get a little bit of white snow to lay on the ledge. Just above the windows, kind of going across. Just adds a little more of a frosty look to everything, to have a little more snow. And sometimes on these up here too, I could put a little bit of snow on the bottom of the window ledge. Doesn't have to be all the way across or a drawn in line particularly. If you just kind of pat it on, it actually looks a little fluffier. These are always optional things. You know, you don't have to put all this stuff in. It's just how much that you want to detail it out. Some people love to work on the detail and others don't want very much detail at all. So, you know, it's just whatever you want to do. Let's see if we need any more. I think there's a little bit over here over this door. This is pretty good down here. You can look in your windows too and see if they need any more little sparkles of light, little yellow white, little bits of yellow or white in the windows. Adds that little glow. Makes them look neat. Let's move on over to our Christmas tree window. And it didn't quite get finished out with all the little detail because I've got just a little bit of pane lines in there. So I'm going to go in with my dark. This is my Payne's Gray and maybe a little raw umber mixture. So we'll put just a few little pane lines in the window, kind of skipping the tree. And then I came down. Divide them into little panes. Make it look a little bit more finished. It's almost too small an area to try to add snow to those little lines. You could, but it's kind of hard. I'm going to take a little bit of white though and just kind of put a little edge of a frame around the window. A little bit to dress it up. When I'm working over an area like this that's wet behind it, I use my little fingernail to hold me up away from the canvas. That's my support so I don't lay my hand right in the wet paint. Doing little detail. Okay, let's leave that area alone and move down to our snow. We're going to put a little bit more snow, a little rougher snow down here from the door coming down this way to kind of, it pulls your eye through the painting better if we have something that kind of connects these areas a little bit better than what we have. So what I did is just pick up a lot of white, kind of thick, heavy white, and I'm going to start up here toward the door. This has had time to kind of tack up a little bit now, so it's a little easier to get some of this to stick on here. And it's thick paint, and you scoot it a little bit to the side, back and forth, but don't smooth it out. If you brush it too much, it's smoothed out entirely, and you lose that texture, and you want to see the texture. So as we come down here toward the little people and the snowman, see, I'm just kind of keeping that rougher looking in there, so it kind of leads you from here up to the house, like a little path where they've been walking through the snow there. And we could go to the other side, over here around where the window is. So let's move over this way a little bit more, and I'll put a little bit of snow kind of heavy out here. Right here, I pulled out just a little bit of yellow white over the windows. I did that a while ago when you weren't looking. So that was not good, but I just saw it and I slapped a little yellow white out from the window for a little bit of highlight there on the snow. The windows, a reflection. And maybe just a little bit more of that rough snow. Let's work it in here somewhere. Can't work it back and forth too many times because you lose it in the wet paint. If you let it dry completely before you came in and did some of this rougher texture on the snow, it would actually be easier. So that's something you could always do when you're working on it at home, that you don't always have time to do if you're in a classroom situation or demoing like I'm doing here. So sometimes it just don't have time for that drying time. So anyway, I think, and you can always rough up some more snow even down in here, whether you do it with light or do it with dark. It creates more of a realistic look, because if they're down here building a snowman, all this snow isn't pristine and smooth. It's got texture to it because they're walking through it and rolling snowballs around in it and all of that stuff. So if you kind of make it look messy down here, it's going to look more natural rather than a smooth, blended surface of pristine snow, which this is not. So anyway, I think we could call that one done, I believe. And I'm going to take my liner and a little bit of cad red light. I tend to always sign in cad red light. And I'll sign it, and we will call it done. Thank you for joining me in painting the Snowman Factory. I think this is a cute painting, and hope you'll enjoy it for many Christmases to come. See you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you.